Brenda, one of my pen pals, wrote to me this week and said, "Hi, Tracy. I just recently started listening to your podcast and I really like it. Yay, I'm so glad. Love the relationship you have with your dogs. My biggest struggle is with our 11-month-old Shepherd mix, might be part Malinois. Ooh, okay. Is freaking out when a dog goes by the house. I've tried distracting, I've tried treats, but she's too focused on the dog to care about anything else. Do you think she will possibly outgrow this? Any suggestions would be very much appreciated. Thank you, Brenda." Well, Brenda, I did start to write you back and I realized I want to take today and really start to break this down. One, because I know so many people have this question, this alert barking at the window. And so I want to break it down. We're going to talk about the first steps, and then we're going to talk about how we're going to test things, how we're going to see what we're going to do next. I'm just going to brainstorm this with you in the moment here on the podcast. Let's get into it. Are you worried that your fearful dog may hurt someone or something else? Do you have to prepare just to take a walk around the block? Hi, I'm Tracy, and I too had that dog. The one that you could only walk at nighttime when no one else was around. And I felt ashamed, and oh gosh, I wish that people could just see the dog that I know and love. I wanted the confidence to be able to walk my dog and not have to worry about who or what was around the corner. And I kept telling myself that if I just keep doing obedience drills and distracting with treats, that things would get better. Until I found the secret. Fear is not something that you can train out of a dog. In this podcast, you will find tips to help build your dog's confidence naturally, communication and understanding to foster that trust, and how to address those fear-based behaviors effectively so that you can enjoy a stress-free life with your dog. So if you're ready, stop chopping those chicken wieners, grab your notebook, and let's get to it. Well, hello, my dog-loving friend. It's Tracy. Welcome back. I'm so glad that you're here. I'm kind of excited about this. I don't know how it's going to go, because if you could see me right now, I've got no papers. No papers before me, no notes I've made. I've only read Brenda's question enough to send her a quick response back in email to let her know that I got the message. But I thought it would be interesting to kind of, pull back the curtains and kind of give you an insight into how I dissect these problems, these behavior problems, and how I coming at a solution. If you're new to me, you know that I am not necessarily about just training you techniques to fix things. I don't believe that most of our dogs don't need to be fixed. The dogs are just being dogs. They only know how to be dogs. So they're just being dogs. And I love to, really get to know the dog, really get to know the people, and I work in the relationship aspect of this. How is my presence affecting the dog? How is my influence in the dog? And how can I tweak that or be better so that I can crystallize communication, whatever that is? So this is going to be a little bit of a behind the scenes, if you will, of the thought process I have when reading a question. And this question seems simple enough, but this is, follow along. This is what I go through when I go through it. So I've pulled up Brenda's question again. So the very first thing she says is she's struggling with her 11-month-old Shepherd mix, might be part Malinois. There's two parts of that made me go, how interesting. First of all, 11 months. That's a fun age. That's a fun age. So the age itself is going to play a factor into this, because at 11 months, you've got a dog who's out of puppy into adolescent, but transitioning from adolescence into adulthood. So lower in the message when she says, do you think she will possibly outgrow this? The quick answer to that is no. No, this isn't something that we outgrow. If anything, puppies outgrow behavior, right? That's something that happens in puppy stage. So, from birth to around, 4 to 6, 8 months, depending on the breed and the size and all of that good stuff. But puppies will grow out of behaviors. But it's kind of a misnomer to say they grow out of it, when in fact, in most cases, the behavior no longer works, or they have been given feedback to let them know the behavior is no longer appropriate. So it's not really that puppies grow out of things, but rather their puppy pass is revoked. And you'll see this a lot, especially if you're like me and you've grown up with packs of dogs or multiple dogs. You'll notice that dogs are most dogs, not all dogs, are very tolerant of puppy behavior. And you'll say things like, "Oh my gosh, my older dog is so amazing. Look at all the stuff my dog's putting up with." But somewhere along the line, the older dogs start to go, "All right, enough of that now." Like, we're not doing that anymore. And we say the puppy pass has been revoked. But they've been given feedback to let them know that pass has been revoked, right? They've been told quite firmly in some cases that, just so you know, that behavior no longer acceptable. So I think that's important to know. But at 11 months, we're long out of puppy stuff and we're into adolescent stuff. Now, adolescence is kind of a how interesting stage of development because there's a lot still going on. There's like, sexual development is maybe happening. Perhaps there's been some altercation of the sexual development. If we've altered the dogs or spayed or neutered the dogs, that can change some things. And, but this is where, if you look at it this way, it's kind of the teenage stage. And this is where the dogs are trying to test to see where they fit in the world. Like, where am I going to end up? So the behaviors that you're getting in adolescence, if you are not loving it, we want to make sure that we're nipping that in the bud, because this will solidify that this is the type of dog I am, right? All of this testing that goes on right now. So we want to be very careful about that. So that was the first thing, 11 months old. Then she mentions that it's a shepherd mix, might be part Malinois. So I was like, how interesting. I wonder how Brenda feels about Malinois. Have we done research on Malinois? Is that why she mentioned that? Are we thinking Malinois might be a little bit more protective? Maybe that's where she's coming at. And usually if Brenda was sitting across from me, I would probably ask those kind of questions. Like, how do you feel about Malinois? What's your perception of Malinois? Because there are, I'm just going to put it out there. There are things that when we have our preconceived notions of what we expect a breed to act like, we can sometimes get what we wished for. You know what I'm saying? That's the thing that happens. So that would be my first thing. Then the next part of the message is freaking out. She uses the word freaking out, which I love. I love language because it helps me sort of get into the moment. So I'm now imagining this 11-month-old shepherd mix freaking out. So Brenda's tried distracting with treats, but she's too focused on the dog to care about anything else. And so here's what we know about what Brenda has told me so far. And again, we're just going through my thought process. Brenda's told me this is an 11-month-old female. She might have Malinois in her. She's freaking out about dogs. What does that tell me? It tells me that she's discerning about what she's freaking out at. This isn't a dog that's just going to the window barking for the sake of barking at the leaves going past and whatnot. She has a particular thing she's barking at, and that is dogs. Why is that important? Well, the first question when it comes to barking at the window or anywhere, barking in general, is what is the purpose of the barking? Barking is usually for a purpose, right? So the window barking usually indicates alert barking, and that's going to be the first thing I'm going to test. So what I would suggest to Brenda is that, and I think I did, I think I wrote that in her, I think I wrote that back in her message. But what I would suggest is the very first thing that we're going to do is we're going to test that bark. So if it's alert barking, I'm going to go to the window. I'm going to look out the window. I'm going to see what we're barking at. And then I'm going to say, okay, thank you. I see the dog. Thank you very much. Now let's go do something else. If it's just for the sake of alerting, most dogs will surprise you and they'll be like, okay, as long as you saw it, that's all that matters. When I did this post, about 9 months ago, maybe it was a year ago now, when I did a social media post about that, it went viral and I was shocked by how many people commented, holy moly, that worked. People were amazed by that. But Alert barking is just that. Alert barking is I need to alert you that there's a potential threat. And when we sit at our chair and we don't get up and we don't go look at it, they don't think you saw the threat. So they keep barking. Now, I'm going to assume, I'm making an assumption here, but I'm going to assume because of her language, and she said freaking out, I'm going to, and it's a dog that she's freaking out at, that this is, it may still be alert barking, but there's probably some nuances here and a little bit of territorial barking, right? And so this is where I'm going to start to literally test some things. How how influential am I in my dog's life? And we know that treats don't matter to her in this moment, and that's cool. You already found that out, so you tested that out, which is great. You can check that off the list, right? Next, after the alert barking test where you go up and you say thank you, you're going to ask her to go do something else. And by asking, I mean, we're going to like just simply use our hand gesture and we're going to ask her to come away from the window and go do something else. I'm going to assume that's not going to work, but I'm still going to test it. I'm going to test it and then I'm going to say how interesting. Okay, that didn't work. Now, the next step may be to add a drag line. The drag line is literally just a light old leash that you cut the end off so it doesn't get caught up on anything. Always never leave a dog unattended with a drag line on. I need to put that out there. But if I'm home in the house with her, I might have a drag line on. And the purpose for the drag line is to allow me to be able to guide her with the leash if necessary. Now, you notice I didn't say pull her away from the window. I still want to test and see how much influence I have, because we know she's kind of lost her mind. She's gone right brain. She's like, talking to the other dog. So I'm going to still test. I'm going to gently pull and also still guide with my hand and ask her to do something else. The key to this always, for anybody, if you're just jumping in, for anybody that's got a dog that is barking at the window, the key to anything when it comes to this is you have to give the dog something else to do. You can't just tell them no and leave them. They'll go back to the window, guaranteed 100% of the time, because you can't leave it in a vacuum, right? Where there's a no, there has to be a yes. So make sure you give them something else to do. Okay, thank you. You've done your barking. Let's go over to your bed now and here's a chew or whatever. Whatever you want to do. If you've done some obedience, you can put them on place. Whatever you want to do, that's up to you. But you have to make sure you give them something else to do. In the second phase where I'm testing, because I know she's not listening because she's freaking out, I use the leash. I see how much leash pressure I actually need in order to influence my dog. If it's literally just me pulling her back, how interesting. That is going to say something about me. I would say my next step after that would be I would be practicing my influence when there's no trigger around. That's where I would start. Now, all of my stuff takes time, which is why lots of people don't like it. But if you're in it for the long haul with me, everything else gets easier. Trust me when I say this. If you put in the time now to actually go through all these tests and then start to work on these little tiny aspects of it, everything else gets easier. That is my promise to you. It's a lot of work up front, but it gets easier in the end because we're really starting to get down and to the root of what's going on. Now, if we're talking about a dog that is being territorial about dogs on her property or near her property, now we have to think about territory. And what does territory mean to your dog? So, one of the things that I do with my dogs, I was going to say every day, but right now I haven't been doing it because the grass is really long and it's wet and I can't find my shoes. But normally what I do with my dogs almost every morning is after I feed them, I go out to the yard with them and I walk the perimeter with my dogs. Now, I live out in the country. When I say I'm walking the perimeter, it's just the outskirts of my lawn. I don't have fences because I live on 44 acres. But I still walk the perimeter of the lawn. And the reason for that is because most dogs are going to go out and check the perimeter first thing in the morning, especially where we live, because deer have gone by and then we have raccoons and we have foxes. We have all sorts of animals out here that might have crossed the path. My dogs like to eat the deer poop or roll in the deer poop, all that fun stuff. But because I am walking the perimeter with them, I'm part of the pro-social event of checking the perimeter, which is a natural thing for dogs to do. Because I'm a part of it, I am much more influential for those perimeter conversations that my dogs are having. So when I go and say, okay, just leave that. And when I have to tell my dogs to leave stuff, it's because there's deer there. Or in the one case, a horse broke out and was on my backyard, was standing in my backyard. But when I have to say, okay, leave that, that's because I've already developed influence in the perimeter check. I'm part of that with them. When you're not part of it with them, and that's the reality for most dogs, most of the time we let them out first thing in the morning, we're making our coffee, we're getting ready for work. We don't actually do perimeter checks with them. So when our dogs are communicating to us, there's a threat, there's something out there, whatnot, we're not a part of that. When we say, hey, it's fine, they're like, how do you know? You don't know. You don't know anything about the perimeter, right? And so when we're doing that, that's one of the ways that I gain influence. Does it happen overnight? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And it's part of the everyday interactions that I have with my dogs that help with my influence on them. Okay? But when we're talking about territory, I'll very quickly go over sort of why territory is confusing to dogs. So maybe we can come at it with a little bit more nuanced approach on how we handle it. But if we take our dogs back to their ancestors, we go back to, say, even looking at, like, I don't know, have you ever seen there's a picture of the wolf packs? I think it's in Yellowstone National Park, right? But because they have trackers on them, so it's a diagram of the whole park, and it'll show you where each pack has their territory. And if you notice, it's a large territory that each of them have, and they may slightly cross. It looks like one of those what are those diagrams called? Venn diagrams. Did I make that up? Is that a thing? Am I smart, or did I make that up, or who knows? Anyway, you get my point. So the way that packs or our dog's ancestors would monitor territories is scouts will go out and they'll check the perimeter, and sometimes there'll be a slight overlap, but generally it doesn't result in any sort of conflict. One, because the territory is so big and there's space and all that other stuff. Now let's talk about domestic dogs. We have identified their territories as, here's your house, so there's your den. And then we have this little tiny block of land that we've separated with fences. And beside you is another pack. And beside you on the other side is another pack. And we've made these very, very small packs. But here's where it gets even more complicated in the dog's mind. Because we will take our dogs out of our territory and we'll walk them in front of other dogs' territories. So you can see why, from the dog's perspective, they might be going like, this is too confusing. What is going on? People are in my territory. I'm supposed to defend it. I'm letting my human know. They're just telling me to shut up. Nobody's listening to me. So you can understand why barking can be and is probably one of the top 3 complaints and questions that dog trainers get. It's barking, and barking because of territory and stuff like that. But when you look at it that way, you can kind of almost go, okay, well, I can see where the dogs are coming from. So what do we do about that? Well, as I mentioned, I don't know Brenda's situation, but if we're, let's say, talking about the front of the property, most likely your backyard is where your dog goes and knows their perimeter, but their front yard is not. So if that is the case, I would be taking some time with my dog on a leash, going out in the front, walking my perimeter line to let them know, hey, this is our property, but the sidewalk isn't really ours. And beyond there isn't really ours. And then I would take some time just being on the front lawn with my dog and see how she feels about the passersby, giving her some feedback in that moment. Like, when that dog is walking down the street, we're just going to sit here. And if she goes, what, and we go, no, we're good, and have her just sit and watch those dogs go by. Let her know it's okay that they're on the sidewalk, facing that direction. They're no threat to us. They're walking by. Taking that time to do that. Now, if you have a dog that's going banana beans crazy about dogs walking by, or your dog is reactive on leash, then we've got another thing. Like, we have to start there. We have to start with, like, getting that calm. But if it's possible, if she's not like that, if she's able to sort of go out and just sit, you can just sit and watch dogs walk by, after you've done that perimeter, to be like, this is ours, that's theirs. Or it's not theirs. It's not theirs. It's common. Right? But we want to just let her know that they're allowed to walk there. It's okay. I'm not threatened by it. Neither should you be. We're okay. Everything's fine, right? That kind of thing. So that's where I'd start. Now, that was quite a ride. That was quite a ride, eh, Brenda? And I threw a lot at you. But the idea, the common sort of core idea around all of this is that we have to test to see, one, what the bark is telling us. What is she trying to tell us? How does she actually feel about it? What is her emotional response about it? Is that anxiety? Is it territorial aggression? Is it protectiveness? Like, you get to kind of test that, like what's going on for her there. And then we want to test, what's our influence. Can I influence your behavior? If I can't, how interesting. If I can't, how am I going to start to influence your behavior? How can I help you see that I have your back, that I understand what you're seeing, that I'm part of this with you? Because I still want my dogs to let me know if somebody's on my property. We all want that. But what I want my dog to be able to do is, when I say, oh, okay, that's just Bill, he's coming over for a coffee, that my dog goes, okay, if you're cool with it, I'm cool with it. That's actually the goal, right? We don't actually want her to stop barking. We want her to be able to exist and be like, there's a dog, it's okay. So if we can get to a point where she's on the lawn and she sees them and she starts to make this connection that dogs walking down the street, they're walking down the street, they're not facing our house, they're not coming onto our property, they're allowed to be there. Then we can start to do the same thing in the house. When she's in the house, she goes to the window, she starts barking. We go, okay, that's good. Thank you. Right? Now, everyone always asks me this, so I'll answer it. Do I have to do that forever? Maybe, but not likely. When you start incorporating all your other communications throughout the day, like, I like to remind people that from the moment that you get up to the moment that you go to sleep, you are communicating with your dog. You're either amplifying your communication or you're confusing your communication. So when we start to really dig deep into this, and I will tell you, like, for those of you that are in my program, like the Fearful Dog, you'll know that, like, we talk about this. We're going to get deep into this. Like, what does it mean when I step into space? What happens when I, do this? What happens? We really start to connect with our influence on our dogs. And when we start to see it, you can't ever unsee it. That's the other thing. But you'll start to realize that every single opportunity, from the moment you get up to the moment you go to sleep, is an opportunity to amplify your communication. So do I have to get up every single time and go to the window? No. But I'll be honest with you, my dogs don't alert that much anymore. And the time that my youngest did, if you haven't seen that video, it's funny. The time that my youngest did alert me to the thing, and I thought she was wrong, she was right. So, so I learned my lesson. Anyway, so there you go. That's a little bit of like the behind the scenes of how I kind of break this down. For you, Brenda, the first step is I would go and see whether or not I can influence my dog. Is she alert barking? If I say, thank you, let's go do something else, does she do it? I'm going to think she doesn't. If she doesn't, how interesting. Let's talk about now what we're barking at. Is it territorial? Is it protection? We have to break that down. All right. I think that's it for today. Let me know if you like that. If you like that kind of sort of behind the scenes sort of thinking and talking out loud through a problem, let me know. We can do more of that. And if you want me to answer one of your questions, you can do exactly what Brenda did and make sure that you sign up for the Canine Chronicles. How do you do that? You're going to go to beyondobedience.ca, hang on the page for a little bit. It's going to come up and ask, do you want to be part of the Canine Chronicles? You give me your name and your email, and that's it. We're pen pals. Then you can reply, ask questions, and maybe your question will be featured on the podcast, just like my new friend, Brenda. All right, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed that. Listen, if you did enjoy that, please make sure that you share this video with all your dog-loving friends. If you're on Apple, give me a 5-star written review. It really does help. It really does help. And if you're on Spotify, feel free to comment. Let me know what you thought about this episode. And as always, get out there today and be the person that your dog thinks you are, because your dog thinks you're amazing, and so do I. Have a great weekend, everybody, and I'll see you all next week. Bye for now. And one more thing. This podcast is meant for entertainment and education purposes only and should never replace hands-on professional training. If you're really struggling with your dog's behavior, be sure to reach out to a professional in your area for help. All right, I think that's it. Bye for now.